The city Shrasvasti was one of the greatest cities in India 2,500 years ago. It was a business hub as well as the capital of the Kosala Empire, where King Prasenji had his palace. As such, there were a good number of rich men in the city. One of them had a daughter and a son, and lived in a big house, pampering his children with luxuries. When the daughter was of marriageable age, he arranged to marry her to a son of a family of equal social and financial status. But the girl was already in love with a slave man of the family. The legal system in those days allowed that slave owners had the right to punish the slaves as they will, even putting them to death. In order to escape death, the two lovers eloped to a place far away from the city. Afraid of being found, they lived obscurely in a forest, living off the land. The rich man's daughter, used to living a life of luxury, now foraged in the jungle for edible fruits and leaves while her husband hunted and fished. Not long after, she was pregnant with her first child. In her delicate condition, she started missing her family. She wished to go home and asked to forgive her. She longed for the life of being cared for by all other members of the household. Her husband complied to her wishes, at the risk of his life. He knew that death penalty was waiting for him. They started off to her parents' home, but on the way, she gave birth to a son. Her husband urged her to keep on hiding, since the baby was already safely born. When the son was a toddler, she was pregnant again. This time too, she insisted on going back to her parents. The three of them set off to her parents' home, and when they had not very long to go, a rainstorm prevented them from going any further. They built a makeshift hut, and while taking shelter, she gave birth to a son. In order to keep the mother and baby warm, the husband went out to look for firewood. When he did not return, she went out into the forest to look for him. She found him dead, bitten by a poisonous snake. She had no other option but to go back to her parents with her two sons. On the way, they had to cross a stream, normally not too wide or too deep to wade across, but the torrential rains the day before turned it into a swift-flowing, deep and wider stream. She took the newborn baby in her arms and crossed the waist-deep water. Then she left the baby on the bank and went back to take the toddler waiting on the other side. When she was halfway through, a kite swooped down and flew away with the baby. She tried to scare the bird, flailing her arms. The toddler on the bank, thinking his mother was beckoning him to come, got down into the river and was carried away by the raging current. She had lost her sons and husband all in one day, but she still had her parents. She hoped to reunite with them, ask for their forgiveness, and start a new life in the bosom of her family. She gathered up her physical and mental strength and continued her journey. As she approached the outskirts of Shrasvasti, she saw smoke rising from the direction of the city cemetery. She asked other travelers why there was smoke. They told her that during last night's wind and rainstorm a big house collapsed and everyone in the family of three died under the rubble. It was the smoke from the funeral pyre. She asked who they were, since she seemed to know all the wealthy families in the city. When she heard the names of her mother, father and younger brother, her world turned upside down. She went stark raving mad. Not knowing what she was saying or where she was going, she roamed the streets of Shrasvasti, babbling to herself.
My son drowned. My baby was carried away by a kite. My husband was bitten by a venomous snake. My parents and brother were crushed under the collapsed house.
Every time she saw a baby, she would grab it from the mother, saying that it was her baby. Whenever she saw a woman of her mother's age, she would desperately hug her and called her my mother. There were times she was beaten. Sometimes stones were thrown at her for annoying other people. After some time, there was no clothes left on her body. She became known all over the town as Patacara, meaning naked, mad girl. One day, she happened to wander near the Jetavana monastery. Monastery goers drove her away. They were afraid that her unkempt and immodest appearance might bring disgrace to the monastery. At that time Buddha was in the assembly hall delivering a sermon to his disciple. Buddha learned that Patacara was making a scene at the gate, trying to get in. Others might see her as a mad girl, but he foresaw her as one of the greatest senior bhikkhuni, of the Sangha community. The mad girl who was being driven out of the monastery gate was one who had taken a vow to become an arhat, and to receive the title of the most learned one in Vinaya texts, and prophesied by Padumita Buddha himself that she would indeed be one in the time of Gautama Buddha. Let her in, Buddha said. Somebody threw a cloak over her. She walked into the assembly hall, rather ignorantly, along the aisle that was meant for Buddha only. As she was walking to the place where Buddha was seated, little did she know that the dukkha that had haunted her would soon be over and that the blessed life would begin soon. By that time, she was decently covered. She knelt at the feet of Buddha and heard him say, Calm down, my child. When she heard Buddha's soothing and compassionate voice, she managed to pull herself together and muttered the words she had been saying all the time.
My son drowned. My baby was carried away by a kite. My husband was bitten by a venomous snake. My parents and brother were crushed under the collapsed house.
Buddha said, "Stop being sorrowful, my child," and asked, "What causes mud to form?"
Water, my lord. When dust is mixed with water, mud is formed.
Then, how do you clean the mud?
With water, my lord.
It's true. Likewise, heartache is caused by the mind. It can be erased only by the mind. At the end of the dialogue, Patacara regained her normal state of mind. Then Buddha preached, "This is not the only time in samsara you have been through these kind of sorrowful experiences. In your previous lifetimes too, the tears you shed from the grief of losing loved ones could fill the four seas." He went on, "In the face of death, you cannot rely on your family, loved ones or anybody else. They cannot take away the pain you are suffering or prevent you from passing. That is the truth. Once you know the truth, you should look around for something that is truly dependable. So, first of all, moral and character should be free from impurities. Next, make the path to nirvana free from obstacles and hindrances, urgently. It is done by following the 8 noble paths, 8 magans. See, first and foremost, video of our channel. That is, practice the mindfulness meditation, and understand the rising and passing of all phenomena." After hearing the discourse, aimed specifically at her, Patacara, now sound of mind, attained the Sotapanna Magga, the first stage of enlightenment. When she attained the Sotapanna stage of enlightenment, she joined the Bhikkhuni order. Her tousled hair was shaved, and she adorned the robes of a Bhikkhuni. But the name Patacara lived on. She was a very studious, especially in the Vinaya texts, the code of vows for monks. Other monks came to her for clarifying and settling arguments. She also meditated earnestly. Not long after, she attained arhatship after contemplating on the marks of existence, anicca, dukkha, anatta. She was able to see through her past lives. In one of her past lives, she was a rich man's daughter. One day 6 robbers came and killed all her family and robbed everything they owned. But they spared her life, to suffer the aftermath of the calamity, alone and penniless. She cursed them from the depth of her heart, pointing them one by one.
May you die from snake bite. May you die by drowning. May you be carried away by a kite. May the 3 of you crush to death under the debris of a collapsed building. May I be able to see these curses come true with my own eyes."
After that life, she traveled through samsara, accumulating merits and performing virtuous deeds. She and the 6 robbers never met, but her vengeful curses did not go in vain. So, in her last existence, she met the robbers again, as her immediate family, her own flesh and blood, and she was able to see all her curses came true. She then remembered what Buddha told her. "Why are you grieving, my child Patacara? Instead, you should be rejoicing." She now understood that she had sown seeds of verbal akusala, an unwholesome, bad deed, and in one of her previous existences, she saw the tree that grew from the seeds, bearing fruit, and she witnessed it firsthand, at a great cost. In her later life she was adored and revered by numerous disciples for her wisdom and compassion. She was well known among them as Venerable Patacara Theri. To her lay disciples, she always guided them to be stoic in the face of adversity. She once delivered a sermon to a group of 500 women. All these women have one thing in common. They had lost their children and were feeling depressed. She advised, concerning the departed loved ones,
We do not know where they came from. We do not know where they had gone. Just like visitors, they come and go on their own. We are just wayfarers in the immeasurable time span and vast expanse of samsara, the cycle of rebirth and death. Rather than wallowing in grief, we should seek for the way to liberate from the samsara.
After listening to this sermon, all 500 of them gave up their lay life and became bhikkhunis. They followed Dhamma, practiced meditation, and in due course became arhants. In her unique way, based on her tragic and unique life experience, she guided many disciples to liberate from samsara. When she was of old age, she passed into nirvana. The end.